All right, so depending on which lenses you wear, this is going to interest you, or this is going to be one of those conversations that is a bit controversial. Today we are focusing on digital lending, and I have numbers on how the situation is like. Here then is data I prepared for you on the state of digital lending. So this was a survey that was done in December 2019. We apologize because this is the only data we have right now. It's the most recent one, December 2019. Over 4,000 people were interviewed by Geopol, and of course 1,000 respondents by the time they were being asked said they had taken loans in the last 6 months or in the last 6 months preceding this interview. And then there are 120 digital lenders in the Kenyan market currently. Let's give you a bit more of numbers on the same. So 83% of those who are taking digital loans were highly satisfied with their mobile lending experience, meaning you are grateful, you really loved it. And of course, 88% would consider taking another loan out in the future. Of those people, 66.5% took personal loans, and then 33.5% took loans for businesses. Let's give you more numbers on the same. 41% used the loans for household expenses and bills. Rent here, bill there, your Wi-Fi is not paid and everything, that's why you couldn't be taking a loan. 23% of them take those loans for emergency expenses. 20% take them for medical expenses. Of course, that is coming again against the backdrop of the president's push for people to take up NHIF. And then 53% of business loans were for goods purchases. Give you a bit more of numbers still on the same. 19% took loans for emergency purposes. 84% of those who took business loans stated that there was a growth due to the loan. Of course, biashara ilinoga sana kwa sababu walikuwa wamechukua mikopo hiyo. And then 45% would not have another credit option if not for the mobile loan. And that's why we're going to start our discussion here on the mobile lending experience. Joining me now in this discussion is Tala Country Growth Manager Anne Stella Mumbi to talk about the lending situation. Good to see you, Anne. And I want to just start from the last point right there. Did you ever see a point whereby it would be so easy to access a loan as just dialing from the mobile phone and a disbursement is made to your mobile phone or the same? Did you ever foresee that? Because you have to have all these securities and collateral and everything for you to access an emergency loan. Anne?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Brian. And that's a really good point, and that's the premise of why companies such as Tala were founded.
Okay.
So if you backtrack a couple of years back, right, a lot of people were left out of the formal financial economy.
Okay.
And the issue was, a lot of people did not have data that banks and other formal institutions could take in to be able to underwrite and determine credit risk.
Okay.
And this is where tech companies and innovation came in to really help to close that gap. So the bigger question was, we're having new ways of money moving, such as mobile money. So how can we use this alternative, data points to underwrite for credit? And Tala was born, and we were the market pioneer in Kenya.
Amazing. Yeah. And still talking about the same thing about credit rating, and of course we have the numbers. About 14 million Kenyans have been listed in the CRB. That is quite a telling number right there. Of course, there are so many other factors that lead people to go and borrow and to go and take some of these loans. We have been having a pandemic, there's been a hard time, and guys have been retrenched, and of course the job market is also contracting. But then how does somebody avoid being in the CRB?
Yeah, so first thing I always want to clarify is CRB is not just for negative listing.
Okay.
And that's one of the, that is what has been projected in the media for the longest time. However, the power of credit bureaus is being able to have your credit history in a formal financial into the formal financial economy.
Okay.
So that, if you want to be able to take a loan with a bank and everything else, if you're a good borrower, your credit risk is very low, right? And companies are actually able to offer you loans. So that is actually an advantage, right? And that is why for us, we've always maintained that it is very important to enable access for different financial providers to the CRB. However, while factoring in some of the challenges that are there, such as what you mentioned, right? 14 million Kenyans. So what are the different policies we're putting in place together with the different regulators to just ensure that it's a clear understanding of how listing is happening, how collections are happening, and so on. So that is still the gap. However, just to repeat, CRB is not not bad.
Okay.
And that's a message I always give to Kenyans, right? It's not just about negative listing.
Amazing. You've talked about policies, and of course there is a bit of self-regulation and of course enhancement and improvement of your services to the people. How then should digital lenders innovate and of course come up with features and structures so that they increase the user experience?
Yeah, so there are two things there. I think talking about user experience, one of the challenges that has existed in the sector has just been about fair lending and collection practices. And that is why Tala was at the forefront of the setting up of the Digital Lenders Association of Kenya, which is DLAC. And this is a body that seeks to put responsible lending at the forefront. So how can we come together as an industry and the different industry players and collectively come up with ways of working, right? How should we be operating? How do we continue to educate consumers in the market about digital lending? Because it is new. Sure. The digital lending industry is still not 10 years old, right? So being able to come together as an industry to set some of these parameters, even as we're getting into sort of a regulatory period with now under the purview of the Central Bank of Kenya.
Amazing. And what is this new feature in Tala that is improving user experience?
Yes. So for us as a company, we're thinking of it as we're moving into sort of a phase 2 of our growth. Okay. And this is mostly around customer-centric innovation. Okay. So we're listening to our customers and thinking, okay, how can we put control in the hands of the customers to just enable them to have charge over their financial lives? So one step that we have taken is the Loans Your Way product. And this is a flexible credit option that allows customers to select their due date. Okay. So between 15 to 61 days, you're able to select a due date that works for you. So why is this important? Think of it as you're mid-month and you're getting your salary by the end of the month. Then you're able to just select the date that your funds are actually coming instead of being fixed on a 21 or a 30-day loan. So you're not shocked in the middle of the month, right? Okay. So if you're running a business, you're getting payment at a certain point, then you're able to just align exactly to when you need that money and when you will be able to repay.
Amazing. Let's talk about data protection and how you are complying to this very important phenomenon in this world, in the day-to-day that we live in. And there's been illustrations, there's been instances of other digital lenders using other third-party detail that has been provided by the user or by the borrower to call them in terms of, and in a bid to try and attract or recover the debt that has been there. How is the industry turning around this phenomenon? Yeah, that is true, and that's been a big problem in the market, right? The example I always give is in 2014, we were the market pioneer. Fast forward 7-8 years later, the 300 lenders in an unregulated environment. So, it makes sense that we're starting to see some of these challenges. Okay. And, as Tala, what we have maintained is we believe that our customers have agency over their data. So first, we're able to make it very clear what customers, the type of data we need from you as a customer as you're signing up. And we always clarify that this data is just for the purpose of underwriting. It's the same way you take physical documents to a bank, right? It's just for us to be able to determine credit risk. And no one should be contacting your friends and family because the relationship is between Tala and the individual. And that is, what the market evolution is moving into, because for us, we classify that as being a responsible lender. And now with the Data Protection Act coming in, it will really enforce some of these ways of working in the industry among all the lenders. So it's just for KYC, purely. Let's talk about the future as we bring this discussion to a close. Where do you see the digital lending going into in the future? Yeah, so digital lending is already in the future, right? It's already changed how it's already democratized access to credit in the market. We're moving from a place where majority of Kenyans could not get loans from the more traditional financial institutions to a place where we're thinking about how we can use different types of data to underwrite. So the thinking on our end as a company and what we also see the industry moving into is a big diversification of the credit options that are available to customers, and being able to have customers operating in a safe, having a safe operating environment that keeps the
their needs at the forefront, right? And even more importantly, as I already mentioned, it's about putting control in the hands of the customers.
Okay.
So are we designing products that customers actually want and that cater for the needs of the specific customer?
Customization.
Yeah, exactly. So it is about personalization. As a customer, am I getting what I need from a lender? And the lenders who are able to build for customers will actually be winning in the market.
Amazing. Customization for the masses. I know we had said this, that was our last question, but I'm going to ask you, you alluded to the issue about financial inclusion in a largely informal economy in which people, the government, and of course other private sector players are trying to digitize so that we get into a place whereby we can verify your credit worthiness and of course look at other metrics even before we lend you. Could this be our simulation to the credit card system that we see in other developed countries? Because we are seeing a big population, a big chunk of the population in Kenya still is using informal means really to access financial services. Could this digital lending be our replacement or our simulation to the credit card system in other countries?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't completely say a complete replacement, but I think it will just be complementary to systems that exist. So if you think about it right now, even though we have the digital lending industry, a lot of people are still getting loans from the chamas, from family and friends, you know, buying goods on credit from the shopkeeper, right? So that is a good example from the FSD report that came out in 2020. But what digital lending will be able to do is formalize this existing system. Therefore, you can imagine a chama is a social setting and it will not change, right?
Sure.
However, what digital lenders would be able to do in such an instance is digitize that system, right? So where is the chama holding the money? Can the chama use the savings that they have to borrow against and get maybe a larger sum to be able to maybe buy a piece of land and maybe they're borrowing for X? The amount they've saved. So that's an example I'm giving. But I see it as digital lenders being able to formalize existing, more traditional ways of borrowing, but it's not necessarily a replacement.
A replacement.
Yep.
Very well. We have been speaking to Stella Mumbi, the country growth manager for Tala East Africa. Of course, that discussion continues even off air. We'll be talking about it at Brian George KE, at KTN News KE, of course, hashtag Business Cafe. Many thanks for your company. That's where we end it right here on Business Cafe. Do have a lovely weekend, and of course, see you next week. We'll be talking about the Kenya Association of Manufacturers Manufacturing Manifesto. Why should you care about manufacturing in this environment today? That and so much more with Mushai Kunyira, the chairperson of Kenya Association of Manufacturers, next week, only here on KTN News. I'm Brian George. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. Good morning, Africa.